Good day and welcome to Finchat podcast, where we interview professionals in the finance industry to allow them to share their experiences and knowledge to educate and expose the next generation of business people and entrepreneurs to the world of finance, banking and related topics. My name is Randy Seta, and here at Finchat we recognize experience in business as a resource to learn from, and we try to harness that resource as best as possible. Welcome to the Finchat podcast. The topic on the cards today is credit. And given the current economic climate we're in, I thought it would be a perfect time to unpack this topic. Now, if you haven't heard our latest series on REITs, we'd urge you to go back and give it a listen because it was a very insightful series. In that series, they spoke about the importance of having a mentor, and I'd say that message resonated with me personally and inspired me to ask my mentor to come on the podcast. So my mentor is a credit analyst at RMB, has experience in both academia and corporate. Kwasi, thank you and welcome to the Finchat podcast. How are you?
Thank you, Randy. I'm very well, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm right. See, I started off by saying that you're a credit analyst at RMB, but I want to backtrack. So let's go back to where it all began. So where you're from, your journey, your process. Let's get to know that.
Okay, awesome. Sorry. So journey, do you want me to start from high school, varsity, just for clarity?
We can start from high school.
Okay, no, perfect. So I grew up in a small town, Tata in the Eastern Cape. And that's where I did all my schooling. Completed high school at a school called Zingisa Comprehensive High School. And after completing, I was very certain that I wanted to go to UCT, and that was my core focus. And I wanted to do something, business related. Initially, my mind was set on actuarial science. But when I got there, I quickly reassessed what my future goals were. And business science was the perfect match for me in terms of what I wanted to do. So I did business science with a CA option. So that means that you come up with a double major, one in being a specialist in finance and the other a specialist heading into the chartered accounting stream. And I think that was a very good decision for me. I've thoroughly loved the journey. So after studying at UCT, I stayed on to be an academic trainee, offering my services as an assistant lecturer. Then I went to Deloitte to audit for 2 years, where I specialized in financial services, mainly hedge funds. So a lot of the...
What decisions and what considerations did you take in to decide to become an academic trainee?
Academic training. So I think the first was, I guess it was feedback from other people that they recognized my ability to teach and to break down complex topics, for other people to understand. So I was encouraged by the lecturers then who saw that potential. And when I spoke to the lecturers for guidance, they said, well, look at your career. You have got about a 40 to 45 year career ahead of you. Using 1 year to lecture would not hurt you, but rather it will expose you to a different skill set, being able to present, to people, being able to convey ideas, being able to persuade people. And I thought that was a nice set of skills to sort of get as a young person heading into business.
So between audit and financial services, why didn't you go for the financial services route straight out?
Well, I think it was more of an ideological battle which I had. When I came out of articles, the question I had was, should I become an entrepreneur or should I go into the financial institutions? Now, why that was a challenge was I did my articles during the financial crisis. And we know the financial crisis related to some very, let's say, poor decisions, or rather greedy sort of activities in the markets, which stemmed from the financial services industry. And so I had to ask myself, do I want to be groomed in such an environment? Do I want my mind to be molded in such an environment? Or do I want to maintain my level of flexibility in terms of my thinking and in terms of the opportunities which I would like to chase? And the answer was the latter, to rather be an entrepreneur, let your mind be flexible to look at opportunities without being forced by some kind of a corporate line of thinking. And so I decided to put corporate or financial services on, even though at that point I had passed, even CFA level 1, I put it on hold as well because of the conclusion which came out of my thinking.
Why did you decide to go that route, and what benefits does it have? And looking back now, what has it helped you with in the now and just in life in general?
Right. So I looked at my CA journey, and I realized that in the CA journey, I'll become a specialist in accounting, right, with some knowledge regarding finance, some knowledge regarding tax, but by and large, a specialist in accounting and auditing. I wasn't convinced that it had given me an in-depth sort of knowledge regarding finance. And I really enjoyed finance, mainly because it allowed one to be very flexible in terms of their thinking. I also like the idea of being able to create, value. And I've always had the opinion that accounting and auditing protect value. They don't create value, but once that value is created, then they protect it in terms of the way that you communicate it to the outside world or to yourself. And so I wanted something that would deepen my understanding of creating knowledge. And the CFA was definitely the answer to that. It was a globally recognized qualification. It was technically rigorous from a finance perspective. So the journey has been fantastic. It has definitely moved my knowledge of finance from, let's say, if there were 10 levels, from level 3 to level 8. And I think level 9 and 10 I'm receiving by working in the financial services industry and applying that knowledge. Also, the CFA has provided a certain level of differentiation. There are a lot of CAs out there who are competing for jobs in the market, but I think it's always good to make sure that you're able to differentiate your skill set and what you have to offer to the market. And the CFA was that tool that allowed me to differentiate my skill set and my personal brand.
Articles finished at Deloitte. What's next for you?
So next was to sort of try and pursue some entrepreneurial ambition. I had run a consultancy in Cape Town, doing research. The client base was in Johannesburg, and what my business partner and I wanted to do was to move over to Johannesburg and see if we could grow this opportunity. Obviously, being an entrepreneur is not easy, it's very tough. And so one also has to figure out how you're going to support your lifestyle. But in terms of how it's going to support my lifestyle, whatever decision I made had to be also in line with my passion. And so going to lecture at Wits University became an obvious choice. I could still impact people. I could still use skills which I'm good at and also passionate about to make sure that I'm able to survive financially, but I'm also to give back, to society in terms of the noble profession, if I may put it that way.
And I saw an interview doing some research about your CNBC Africa interview, where you're the head of corporate finance at the African Financial Group. One just like exploring that option a bit. Let's just talk about that.
Correct. So there was a boutique corporate finance house, and they were trying to build, their skill set. And they identified me as the right person to sort of help build that enterprise. So it was actually it was a very good platform for me, because that was probably one of my first real application of my finance knowledge. So there, what we're trying to do was think up of new ideas across the African continent. And the interview that you would have seen would have related to a healthcare sort of system or ecosystem, which allowed Africans to access healthcare in a very cost-effective manner. Had that really taken root, then I think would have had a nice solution for this COVID trouble that we're going through. So we explored very novel ideas and thought through how we can capitalize those models, how we can bring them to life. And I think there were three core pillars. One was healthcare, the other was financial services, and I think the third was manufacturing. And in the manufacturing sort of side of things, I think was the most exciting project which we had embarked on, which was the production of cashmere in Africa using African goats. And the project was based in the Eastern Cape. So cashmere basically comes from goats. It's the fine hair that goats produce when they're during winter to protect themselves.
Okay.
Never in Africa. So this was one of the first projects that I had to sort of get involved in, and it was really quite exciting.
Very interesting. And just going back to your days at Deloitte, you said you were specializing in financial services and hedge fund. So when you got to Deloitte, how did you decide what to pick when you were there?
In terms of what to focus on?
Yes.
Right. So remember that I always had a passion for finance. That's the reason why I'd done business science finance with a CA option. So I always wanted a very detailed knowledge of the financial services world. And so when I went in, I had no doubt that I wanted to focus on financial services companies.
Okay. And you also did your CFA. Did you do that concurrently with when you were doing your articles?
Yes, I did.
And what difficulties did you find with measuring up board exams, the CA route, and the CFA program? How did you juggle the two?
Well, in terms of board exams, it wasn't an issue back then. I think it's still the case. Board exams are written February, March, and CFA offerings are in June and December. Right. So there wasn't a clash. In the first year, you would write your board exams, put it, away. Then you had the decision of either studying for the June or December. I chose the December because then I'll have about 9 months to study for board. And the truth of the matter is, it wasn't that challenging. It wasn't challenging because of a couple of factors. The business science program, which I had done, you would have been well prepared for it. Economics, you were required to do for at least 2 years. Stats, I had done 3 years of statistics, which is needed for the quantitative analysis side of things. And then the CA program also sort of crystallized my knowledge and prepared me well for level 1, because a core focus of level 1 is accounting and ethics. And that that is the bread and butter of the CTA program, of the CA stream.
Yeah.
So literally it was a breeze, to study for CFA level 1. I think it's something that I encourage a lot of CTA students. The knowledge you have is more than enough to pass CFA level 1, even in your CTA year.
It's quite a statement you put down. Very inspiring. The final section of this podcast is just a bunch of questions where we actually ask all our guests. So let me get to it. Kwasi, tell me, what was your first ever job like, ever?
That's a very interesting
Long
question. I need to backtrack. So I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and my dad had a shoe shop back in Tata. And my first job was actually to work at that shoe shop. I must say that I did not like it because it required a lot of selling, to customers, and I wish it was a platform I'd sort of harnessed, better. Obviously, hindsight is always correct, but I was basically, the cashier, talking to customers, welcoming them, looking for their shoes. I found it quite sort of a mundane activity, and that's why I didn't enjoy it that much. But looking back, I think it was a very important platform for me to learn, certain skills as to discipline when it comes to doing activities that you may not like, but they need to be done in order to support a business.
Definitely. And speaking to your intro, passion about finance, when did that come about? When did you realize that I really want to do this?
Right. So I think having grown up in an entrepreneurial sort of family, I'd seen my dad get into various sort of businesses, and my thinking was always, how can these businesses be taken to the next level? So prior to really appreciating moving into finance, I wanted to be a doctor, but me wanting to be a doctor was fulfilling my parents' dream. So when it came to the time for me to choose what to do, then I decided, no, I need to do what I'm most interested in. And so accounting became one of the options that I chose. But when I went to varsity, I realized that just pure accounting wasn't good enough for me. I wanted something that would provide, a wide array of skills. Yeah, and as I went through the curriculum for business science, I realized that this is exactly what I wanted to do, and it was quite right because the decision was correct. Because as our lectures started kicking off, the lecturers who presented them, they had a finance background. I can think of Paul van Rensburg, very a detailed man. He worked in financial services. I think he ran his own hedge fund, made quite a lot of money. I can remember Francois Tourin. He was coming from a corporate finance background. And there were so many people like that in the lecture room, they could just inspire you. And I think that's where my deep love for finance really deepened.
I can resonate there a lot. On to the next question. What do you love to do in your personal time?
In my personal time, I like to watch some good series. And I think
what are you watching?
Currently, I'm watching Ozark.
I love it.
It's an incredible series, so well acted, so well scripted, and you have to pay attention, to the finer details. So it's become a very good go-to series for me. I also enjoy playing sports. I play a wide array of sports: soccer, basketball, table tennis. I played those throughout my schooling life as well as at varsity. I like to read, but when I say reading, not sort of let's say I like to read technical books. So I'm the guy who would enjoy reading sort of a finance textbook. I like to read a lot of technology. Yeah. I like to read a lot of news on the financial markets and economies and what's happening. So that's what I really enjoy. And then watching movies here and there. Spending time with friends definitely is the most important sort of way for me to spend time. So friends and family, because I think it's good to deepen your relationships with individuals, and you can learn a lot from them. So just sitting around having conversations with people is something that I really enjoy.
That's lovely. Can you tell us a bit about or a person that has a special influence in your life and your career as you were going up?
It's a difficult question. Let me think about it. I think let me rather answer it like this. I've seen my dad sort of run businesses, and I really liked the dedication with which he ran those businesses. So he no doubt had a huge impact on my choices. He was also an accountant for a company. I just decided to step it up. Outside of my dad, following that, I don't think I've had a fixed sort of mentor or someone who has had a huge impact. And I think that is one of my biggest when I look back, I'll say it's one of the things that I wish I had, mainly because my journey wouldn't have been so adventurous. It will have been more deliberate, in that someone is guiding me as to where to step. So I've basically used a lot of interactions to sort of understand different people in the financial services industries, and I'll use that to sort of sift out what I think was good for me and then apply it. But there hasn't been a consistent person who has sort of molded my career. With that being said, I think it has been actually quite good, because at times when you have someone molding your thinking, then you forget to actually think creatively and out of the box. You forget to think for yourself, and you're always looking for guidance, from other people. So the journey that I have developed has definitely made me a self-starter. If I want to know something, I go out and figure it out. I try and interact with different people, get their views, make sure that I don't have a biased conclusion. And so I hope that answers your question.
It does. And I think, how would you find the right balance between, you spoke about being a self-starter and how this has actually promoted that, but how could you find the right balance between having someone that guides you but doesn't always mold your thinking, and also allowing you to grow and build you that part of your mind, your critical thinking, your creativity, innovation?
Right, that's actually quite a good question. So I think there are different stages of learning and becoming a master. This is a principle that I've come to believe in following my reading of a book by Robert Greene. The book is Mastery, and he basically pieces together how you can become a master over any field. And the first of it is just becoming an apprentice. An apprentice just dedicates their life to learning and understanding people, right? Or rather, not people, markets and the mechanics of markets. As an apprentice, you do everything without being aware of how they fit together. And so during that phase, I think having a mentor who would guide you through the details of any market is good. Then as time goes on, you become creative aware. Now, when you're creative aware, it means now you start seeing how the chains link together. You see how the financial markets sort of synthesize to create value, right? At that point, you still have your mentor to sort of guide you to refine your understanding of these different links. From that point, now you're in a position to become creative. That means now you're generating new ideas. And that then ushers you into being a master. I think in those two phases, you want to step out of the shadow of a mentor and use them as sounding boards, as opposed to them teaching you where to walk. And I think that's how you then break away from someone controlling what you think and how you think. And you develop your own ability to drive your learning.
That is, I must say, very beautiful. Just a couple more questions. Tell us about a time where you failed and what you learned from it.
Yeah, very interesting. I think this was back in varsity. It was it
PGDA?
No, it was third year. Third year, yeah, it was third year. Accounting, and we're dealing with was it deferred tax? That's right, deferred tax.
Oh, there we go. That's all.
Yeah, and so it was a very strange concept, also because my tax knowledge or my relationship with tax has just never been good. But it was because of that. So I was very confident. So I looked at tax. I was like, oh, tax is easy. You know, it's just a set of rules, not principles. So I didn't give tax, as much respect as I should have. And so deferred tax also had me for a meal. In our first test, I went in very confident, that I knew my deferred tax. It would be so easy. And when the marks came out, I'm shattered. I got a mark that was lower than my age at that point, and I was 21. I hit a nice 15%. And that broke me, it broke me. Yeah. But that incident actually helped me to understand myself very well. So for about 24 hours, there was nothing that could sort of console me. I just wanted to be by myself. I was taking in this pain, and the other reason for it is, back in that day, your marks were public, right? So other people could see, and it obviously was not good for my, my reputation as a top achiever. So I was totally shattered, to have obtained such a mark. But after that, I immediately started to put forward sort of interventions, how I'm going to get back, how I'm going to drive my learning, what I need to do, the level of discipline, how I'm going to change my study routines. And so I went out, I asked opinions of lecturers, as well as academic trainees there. I synthesized, a model for myself, which I continue to apply today. And it's also been sort of a model that I shared with my students at my time at WITS. And it had a remarkable sort of turnaround. The next test, I was sitting on a 76%, and so it taught me that even when you have failed, the biggest mistake you can make is to let that failure break you. Rather, let that failure drive you to find real workable solutions. So analyze what went wrong and how you need to fix it, but commit to the solutions that you've put forward, and use that to incrementally refine your approach to solving problems.
That's actually very insightful. Now, do you have any morning routines?
Morning routines. Well, anyone who knows me well will know that I'm not a morning person. But perhaps I can share what I've committed to during lockdown. So what I do, moment I wake up, I'll listen to some radio. This is while I'm still in bed, just to catch up on what's happening in the markets. I have access to sort of a Bloomberg app, which provides sort of a market analysis globally, right? So at the time that I have woken up, Asian markets have opened. So I can try and read up on what's happening in the Asian markets, what's ticking, and what could potentially happen on the JSE. I'll read up on, what's happening in the financial services market. And then after that, I'll read a scripture from the Bible, just to encourage me for the day. Then I get out of bed. I make sure I dress the bed before I do anything else. And then I start my day.
Right. Thank you so much. And that concludes it for our first podcast. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Kwasi. I'll see you again next week. And to all our listeners, thank you for listening to the podcast. Tune in next time. And if you like the podcast, give us a favorable rating on your podcast platform. Remember to share it with your friends so we can all learn something new. We post reports on the conversations we have in podcasts and other related topics on LinkedIn, so follow us. You can also find us on IG and Twitter, where we post bite-sized infographics.